I think it would be good if we could just have 1 minute of silence, everyone together, so that the people here in the audience and the people online can sort of meet somewhere. Just stay easy. Don't even need to close your eyes. Just become aware of the moment. Wherever you are, wherever you're sitting, just whatever's going on around you. Just go into the center of everything. And just become stable and calm there. Just as every one of us is sitting on a seat, physically, just visualize a mental seat, just behind the eyes somewhere. Physically seated, but also mentally seated. And in fact, that's actually the control center of your thinking and your feelings. So just sit where you make the decisions and you process the information. Just sit there mentally. Let the world do what it has to do, but stay in the center. A peaceful being. Just observing the world around. Give yourself a break. And as you start to just pay attention to being mentally centered, you start to actually feel relaxed. Your thinking slows down. And you get a chance to appreciate your own value. So let's just, everyone, now open your eyes a bit more and get attuned to wherever you are. It helps, doesn't it? How do you feel? Good? Now, this whole idea of leadership in a world which has a huge vacuum of leaders, right? We can see the sort of, at least the political leaders we have here and there, haven't been particularly inspiring. So I'm not going to mention names. But I live in Brazil, and again, it's a huge vacuum at that level. But you know, the whole COVID situation everywhere, it's probably the world's first universal disaster. So that means a catastrophe was happening in every single place. I don't think even one country missed out. So you don't find earthquake that happens in every country, or you don't find a war that happens in every country, or, a hurricane. But it's always when these disasters happen that you find some people picking up the challenge and helping others, and others just folding under. Recently I was in Puerto Rico about 3 weeks ago. And amazing country. They had in a period of 4 years, 2 major earthquakes, 2 major hurricanes, and of course the pandemic. They spent 4 or 5 months without any electricity in the whole country. And I noticed that some people were okay. And if you look at their backgrounds, you find that they were probably the most resilient type of people, that they were strong and flexible, that could, creative and maybe find paths and show the path to others. But of course, a lot of people just were down, There's such a down vibration in that country. A week before, I was talking to a guy from Haiti. I don't know how you say it. Haiti, is it? Haiti, they say. And he was saying that there's no government there. It's just gangs, street gangs, fighting with each other. And he said, you don't know when you leave your house if you're going to come home at night. You may get shot. So obviously there are places which are better off than others. I mean, when you sit in the comfort of a place like London, you can't even imagine these things. If you've ever been in a place where there's an earthquake or a hurricane, I've been in a place where there's an earthquake, my God. I've been in a place where there was a tsunami. And always you find people, examples of those who have the courage to take up the challenge and face what they need to face. And these people are the most inspiring. Now, the pandemic, just take the pandemic, it's shown up all of the weaknesses of our human systems. I don't think any system has passed with honour, whether it's an economic or political, even the health system, any system hasn't been up to the mark. And I understand that, because just a bit of background, I have, on one side, I coordinate the Brahma Kumaris in Latin America, so that's a whole lot of countries. From Mexico down to Chile. We've got centres in all of the countries, except 1 or 2. And then on the other side, my professional life, I've worked in strategic planning and organisational development and leadership development with governments and with very high-level corporations. Especially when I worked in governments, I've worked with the Mexican government. We were working, the president asked myself and another guy, we had a consulting company to restructure the Ministry of Education. It's like, millions of people involved. And there's a lot of very, very complex issues. And I've always found that people, no matter how good their qualifications are, there's a gap between what they can do and what they have to do. I noticed that I was working in the first government of President Lula in Brazil, in his first mandate, 2002, I think, to 2006. I was working in the Ministry of Planning. And again, I was working with the minister. And he had a fantastic team, the best. One of his executive secretaries had been a director at Google. Another one had been the director of the United Nations Environmental Program. So, fantastic team. But the complexity, the difficulties of governing, a whole bunch of people millions and millions of people, it's too much. So what they had to do was this, what they could do was this much. And there's always going to be a gap. So whoever is a political leader, they really don't know what to do. And then some make a good job of it, some make a hash of it, some make a terrible job of it. But if you look at the complex world we live in, it's very easy to be, just pulled and pushed and shoved and thrown here, thrown there, and you lose your sense of direction. And not only that, I always ask when I ever go into an organization, one very simple question. Are people happier when you arrive or when you leave? Very simple question. People light up when you come in, or they thank God he's gone after you leave. Or maybe you don't even know. Maybe you think that people love you, but if you leave a tape recorder in the room after you leave the room, what do you think they will say? Maybe they say good things, but mostly they don't, right? Now, I've noticed that, right? If you've got three people talking to each other, one of them goes away, who does the other two talk about? They talk about the one that's gone, right? So it's all about, if I want to inspire people, I have to know them. I have to understand them a little bit. I have to love them in a way. A friend of mine, I didn't see this, but I knew about it. You remember Mother Teresa, right? She's a little lady about 4.5 feet high, very powerful. And if you ask her, she always wanted to help the poor, and she wanted to be part of some religious organization, but she found herself teaching in a Catholic school in Calcutta. Now, Catholic schools in poor countries are schools for the rich kids. So it wasn't exactly helping the poor. But the story goes that one day she was walking in the Calcutta streets, and she saw a leper lying in the street. And her eyes hit the eyes of the leper, and it was as if she understood, yes, this is what I have to do. I have to help those whom everyone else has abandoned. And so she went to a school and she told the other teachers, I've got this inspiration to really help the poor people in the city. And of course they said, don't bother, we're comfortable here. Don't create waves, She even had to leave her order and get a special permission from the Pope to do it. But she set up that organization, Missionaries of Charity, and she only had that desire to help. And she would move mountains. We have our own Daddy Jank as an example of this too. What she did, all of this place that we're sitting in here, and she was going until she was 103, right? Full, strong, powerful. She had an idea, we didn't have the resources. She had this dream that we should have this building, that we should have a retreat centre in Oxford, we started off with a little tiny room in Kilburn, and I was there actually, in 1975. I was one of the first Westerners to come into contact with the Brahma Kumaris. So I've seen how a person driven by a sense of purpose can make things happen. Now, a friend of mine had a secretary, who at one point was working with the mayor of New York. So she had been working with him, and then she left him and went her own career, and she ended up being the personal secretary of the mayor of New York. And he met her several years later on, and she told him a story just to show you how this being driven by a deep sense of selfless purpose, actually. Wanting to do benefit of others and not worrying about yourself, actually. She said one day she was sitting there in the office, and the mayor was in his office, and she gets a call, and it's the people with Mother Teresa. Can we make a meeting with the mayor? And she says, no, it's not possible. He's got a very heavy agenda today, not possible. But we're here in the building. Mother Teresa's downstairs. She wants to meet the mayor. And of course, Mother Teresa's in the building, and she calls the mayor, Mr. Mayor, I think you better open a window in your agenda to receive her. And so she just marched in, actually. Just marched in and sat down, right? And said, Mr. Mayor, you are not treating your prisoners who have AIDS very well. This is a story that you don't see in the books because his secretary told it. And of course the mayor said, what do you mean? We don't treat the prison. But what prison are you talking about? She said, such and such a prison. Oh no, that's not a city prison, that's a state prison. You have to talk to the governor. Okay, call the governor. And she there with the mayor of New York talking to the governor of the state of New York. You're not treating your prisoners very well in this state. We need to do something. We can help. And so in the space of like an hour, she just cut through all of the bureaucracy, which normally would take months, and got something set up to help those prisoners with AIDS. Why or how did she make that happen? Most people have a problem, right? Most people have a problem to get things happening. No, but she just went through, cut through all the red tape, got it happening because she was being pushed by a sense of purpose, right? Now, I've seen so many such things personally. I was working in Asia, and I ended up being in contact with the president of Unilever for this Asia-Pacific region. In fact, I ended up doing some strategic work with them in Southeast Asia. And I was with him at our headquarters in Mount Abu because he wanted to know what sort of organization we were. And he was there. And just 10 days before, the tsunami in Asia, you know, that huge tsunami in, I think it was the end of 2004, beginning of 2005, where 300,000 people were killed. Some of you may remember that. And well, it was the biggest natural disaster in history, at least that they could remember. And so he wanted to help. So what he did was he called all of the presidents of the group, so about 200 people, all of them presidents of big companies throughout Asia Pacific, 11 countries. And he wanted them to go and to help the victims of the tsunami. And of course, imagine these high-level executives used to such comfort and lots of servants and staff, especially in Asia. They all have 10, 12 servants in their houses, and they have chauffeurs to drive them around. You know, really, they're not the sort of person you can imagine to help in a tragedy. Anyway, he is inspired to help. So one thing is to be inspired by a sense of purpose, and that you open lots of doors. But you can also be inspired to help in a tragedy like this was. And he asked me to go along with him. So I went with them to Sri Lanka, where 30,000 people had just been killed. 30,000 people had just been killed. And there were, you know, horrible scenes. You saw it was 50 kilometres of the coast was completely obliterated. It was unbelievable. There was a train that was laying on its side, right? Stopped at a railway station, but it was on its side. And apparently 1,000 people were killed in that train. Because the wave came and ploofed, right? I remember meeting a woman who, she was carrying her baby and walking with her young sister. She was a young woman, maybe 19. She was carrying her young baby and walking with her young sister. At the time of the wave, what happened? She couldn't hold them. You never saw them again. So you can imagine how much desolation there was, how much, you know, people had lost everything. And you get these top-level executives, right? Presidents of big companies like Lipton's and Omo and, you know, the Unilever companies, all of those big ones. The ice cream companies and the margarine companies and the detergent companies and the Dove, you know, the soap companies. And they were there helping the victims of a huge tragedy. And this guy, who was the leader, who was the president of the whole bit, he was the first one rolling up his sleeves and helping out and, you know, carrying babies and this and that and getting dirty. And, of course, very inspiring. He was just driven to help. He said, how can we, being the second biggest company in the world, both in terms of foods, Unilever is only second to Nestle, and second biggest company in terms of detergents and hygiene products and stuff. How can we not help? You know, people are dying, people are getting hungry. So they came in with stacks of food and stacks of medicine and blankets and everything, you know, to help. But what did the people need? What did the people need? What did they need? Love. They needed love, and he knew that. So how do you get a bunch of very hard-nosed executives to melt that sort of the idea that they have of themselves and the world? Put them in a situation where they're forced to help. This guy, the president, he does not believe in classroom leadership courses, as you can imagine. He believes in taking people to a place where they are forced to learn. And of course, they had to. And he had a plan in mind from the beginning, this president. His name's Tex Gunning, and he became part of the Call of the Time program that Brahma Kumaris ran. But the second chapter of that program was to take people to the jungle. And everyone, all of them thought that, okay, after these 5 days of helping these poor people, we're going to go to a 5-star hotel and, you know, work out what happened. No. He took everyone to the middle of the jungle where they didn't even have a bed. They had to sleep on the ground. There was no electricity, no cell phone coverage, right? And he did not tell anyone. You know what people said? But how are our families going to find out where we are? And you know what his answer was? Did the tsunami warn these people what was going to happen? And of course everyone shut up, right? But he was relentless. We are going to learn something here. And the second bit, this is what he invited me for. The second bit of this program was called Who Am I? Who am I? So we did spend. It was funny because there was no electricity and there were 200 people. I had to sit on a tree, literally under a tree, and they were all sitting on the ground. And I had a megaphone. You know, there were no microphones and speakers and stuff. I had a megaphone. So imagine giving a talk with a megaphone. It was quite a unique experience. And what I did with them, I said to them, first thing we're going to do, I'm going to put you people sitting alone somewhere. You're going to go into the jungle and sit somewhere, and you're going to talk to the nature. You're going to talk to a tree, you're going to talk to a rock, you're going to talk to a stream. What does the rock or what does the tree or what does the stream teach you about how you have to be? Well, rocks are rocks, streams are streams, trees are trees. But if you go into the essence of something, what does a tree show you? In fact, trees in the forest, what do they show you? And one guy came back, the guy from Pakistan, he came back and he said, I realize that trees don't fight with each other. They're all trying to reach the light, right? So all of these people are having these realizations. They're all trying to reach the light. But if one tree comes up in between, the other trees sort of open up to let that one through, to reach the light. So all of these people, I was talking to a snake skin. This other guy said, there was a snake skin. I was talking to a snake skin and it told me that everything's temporary. People have to give up what they have. I was talking to a rock, someone said, and the rock told me that I have to be completely strong, unchanging in a certain way. And of course they were all relating that back to the experience they had dealing with the tragedy. So you see, to justify that to the headquarters, this is what he had to do. You know what happened to these people that went through this experience? They became, I don't know if you've ever seen, this was his difficulty, have you ever seen the logo of Unilever? I'm not giving any, let's say, propaganda here for the Unilever company, but their logo has life in it. It has birds, it has palm trees, it has everything in that U. I don't know if you ever noticed it. So have a look at the next time you get a Unilever product. They sell everything, right? But have a look. It has life in it. And he's saying, we are here to serve life. This is what our company says, but we don't do it. Right? It's just a nice phrase on the wall. So he was uncomfortable with that. So how can we serve life, he thought. And he subsequently took people here, there and everywhere over the next few years. And I was with them 3 years later with the same group, at least 60 of the group, in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam. You should have seen the way they were talking about being, conscious about the things that they have to do to help the world. So he was able to convince people by, first of all, opening their hearts, making them reflect on themselves, and getting in touch with nature in a way. So those people became inspired by him. Because he was, he led by showing, he led by example rather than just, speaking. And this is the problem with our leaders, right? They speak a lot, they say a lot, they tell a lot of untrue things, and they're not particularly inspiring. They inspire greed, maybe they inspire anger, that maybe they inspire arrogance, but they don't inspire truth or benefit. So I've seen people who do that. When I go back to Brazil after this experience in Sri Lanka, some reporter came to me and found out that I'd been there. Oh, you were there. It was big news everywhere at that time. And people were saying this is the end of the world, because it was a huge earthquake and a huge tsunami that was a result of it. And 300,000 people had died. And I got back to Brazil, and this reporter wanted me to talk about the apocalypse, the end of the world. I'm not going to get drawn into that. Like, do you think it's the end of the world? That sort of conversation. I said, look, I don't know if the world, I don't exactly know. I personally feel that the world is getting worse before it gets better. Yeah? Things will break down. This was in 2004. You can see everything's become crazy since then, right? The Americans, after the Cold War, which seems to be re-editing itself, again, Russia and America, where there was the Soviet Union and the United States. At the end of the Cold War in 1989, just before the breakdown of the Soviet Union, the American military started to do scenario building. What is the world going to look like? And they invented an acronym, VUCA. They said that the sort of world that's coming up is a world that is volatile, V, uncertain, U, complex, C, and ambiguous, A, VUCA. It's a VUCA world, they said. And since then, since 1989, the world has become more vulnerable, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous, right? Ambiguous means you can have several opinions about the same thing which all seem true. So that's the bedrock of fake news, right? The ambiguity. No one knows, right? No one knows. So if no one knows, anything goes, more or less. Uncertain, Harvard has called the world that we live in a world of permanent uncertainty, the Harvard Business Review. Front cover page. We are in the time of permanent uncertainty. Permanent uncertainty. And it's true, isn't it? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know what is what. We don't know who is who. We don't know what's going to happen. So we don't know. We don't know where we've been. We don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going. Uncertain. And as uncertainty goes up, anxiety also. Always. Anyway, this reporter was trying to make me say, yes, I believe that it's the end of the world. And I said, look, if I improve the way I relate to people, the way I interact with people and things. And I do that consciously. I am preparing myself for whatever. So if the world gets worse and I'm prepared because I've done the right thing with others and with the world, with nature, with the environment, I've done the right thing, I'll be better prepared to face a worse world than someone who isn't prepared at all, hasn't done anything, which is most people, right? How many people do you know who consciously go about improving their relationships with other people, with the world, with their families and with their neighbors and with the environment? Do you know many people? There are probably not many. But that sort of person will definitely be better able to face a worse future. That person will also be better able to face a better future, embrace it better, because the other one hasn't done anything to prepare. So how will he embrace it? He's not ready for it. And whether the future's bad or worse, this is why I said to the reporter, whether the future is bad or worse, or better, worse or better, the fact that I'm improving the way that I interact with people and things now is helping me now. So I've got nothing to lose if I improve. That was my answer about the end of the world. Don't know, but do what you have to do. Now, if you don't have anyone to inspire you, you have to inspire yourself. That's why self-leadership is very important, leading yourself. Leading yourself. I mean, we're also confused, right? Anyone here not confused about anything? Anyone here has zero confusion? Huh? Well, most people have a little bit, right? Some people have a lot. So I have to unconfuse myself, so that I can at least help myself and my family, or help my colleagues and friends, or help my company, whatever I have to help. I have to start to see things more clearly, and I have to start to understand certain rules. I've got lots of stories, but I mean, we could easily get examples of people within the Brahma Kumaris, of those who just became clear about what they wanted and started to get it happening. That they have the initiative to open the way for others. In the old Indian army, they had three types of category. They had the elephant riders, right? In the few hundred years ago, the Indian armies had elephant riders, so they would go in front and just, open up the paths, make the way. And behind them came the cavalry, very comfortable behind the elephants. And behind the cavalry came the infantry. So the world, if you use that analogy, has very few elephant riders, right? People who are opening the way for others, opening the path. There's a jungle, right? It's a jungle of confusion, a jungle of uncertainty, a jungle of complexity. You're waiting for someone to open up a path. Open up the path yourself. And that's the challenge. Open up a path for yourself. And be, inspiring to others, There's another question I ask those who think that they are leaders. Why would someone follow you? What have you got that's so great that someone would follow you? And they have to think about it. Yeah. Because if you're a boss, it doesn't mean you're a leader at all. You're just a boss. People have a role, it doesn't make them a leader. A leader has to reside in someone else's heart, right? If you don't live in people's hearts, you're not their leader. You may be a boss. Maybe you have the role to be. But, these are the sorts of things that that we have to understand leadership is not a science, it's an art. It's an art. Leadership is something which is personal. It's the relationship you have with the people. And going back to Mother Teresa, you know, at this conference in San Francisco many years ago, it was a conference on leadership. And they found that Mother Teresa was in town, in San Francisco. So somehow they got in touch with her and got her to come and speak at the conference. And she just went up there on the stage, you know. Very short lady, probably a little bit, she was smaller than Daddy Yankee, if you can imagine. Daddy Yankee was already small, but she was smaller. A very small lady, tiny lady. She walks up onto the stage, all of these sort of business executives sitting there in the audience thinking that they're the best. And she said something like this, I'm paraphrasing. She said, "So, you people want to be leaders, do you?" To lead people, you have to know your people. To know your people, you have to understand your people. To understand your people, you have to love them. So if you don't love them, you won't understand. If you don't understand them, you won't know them. If you don't know them, you don't lead them. That was it. Thank you. Goodbye. And all of these people were absolutely stunned. It was the most important conference of all of the guest speakers and the keynote speakers. All of these famous gurus of the business world were there. What do you think they remembered from the conference? 2 minutes of Daddy Janko, I almost said. 2 minutes of Mother Teresa. Why? Because she's inspiring. And why is she inspiring? Because she's authentic. She doesn't want anything for herself. She wants good for the world. That's why she's inspiring. You know? We don't have too many Nelson Mandelas or Mahatma Gandhis or, even Martin Luther Kings. We don't have them anymore. If you think going to the past, we don't have any Jesuses or Buddhas or such inspiring, but we can at least inspire a few people, right? If I become clear about what I have to do, if I become less confused, therefore, if I become inspired to help, if I am moved by a higher purpose, if I have courage, I will open the way and I will be an inspiring leader. Let's have some meditation. So first thing, just sit nicely. Second thing, remember that you are the spiritual being behind your thinking, behind your doing. You have this form, you have this name, you have these roles, but you are the master. You're in the center of lots of things going on around, but you are still. So just keep that idea, I'm this tiny point of conscious energy, okay? Though I have such an impact that I give life to this body. When I leave, the body's dead, so how much power do I have? I see myself as this tiny spark, this tiny star-like conscious energy just behind the middle of the forehead, and just radiating qualities. So I remember that I'm peaceful. Actually, no, all of the other things have actually helped me to remind myself that I am peaceful. My true nature is peace. So, Om Shanti.